They are people. They come in both sexes and in all sizes, shapes, creeds, and colors. Wherever people live, there also live the mentally retarded.
You dumb, lard-ass, lud-tard morons. You still don't get that the answer is the communication of spiritual knowledge and the communication of natural law and objective morality to the mindless, fucktard, zombie horde masses of this fucking planet.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Chronicles of the Great Retardation. I am Harrison, and this is my dear friend, my brother Nick. How are you this morning, Nick?
I'm good, thanks, brother. And yeah, it's good to be back, episode 7. And let's do this, hey? It's been a little while, but for those for those that don't know, I'm Cosmic Surfer, and this is Arabian Pleb here with me, and we are here to talk about natural law and go through some current events, break down, pull on a few threads, bring it all together, call out some retardation in the world, because we firmly believe that consciousness has gone to such a level that it needs to be addressed for what it is, and the freedom movement, the truth movement, and the world in general is in such a state that it needs to be ripped apart and put back together, mate. So let's get into it.
I think my cat just behind me there was a great metaphor of the state of the world right now, just being ripped apart and needing to be put back together. That was all actually my house files for I'm building a house right now, and it's all in disarray, much like how the build is going. So, but anyway, enough about that. No, fantastic, brother. So good to see you. Episode 7. Okay. Episode 7. You know what? I heard something. I was like YouTubing, how to make a successful podcast and what are good techniques and whatever else, just all sort of behind the scenes things. And one thing that it mentioned was that most podcasts fail once they get to episode 7. So if you can make it past episode 7, because that's like the point where most people realize, how much, like what's actually involved, what's necessary, how consistent you have to be, all these sort of things. So we've made it, brother. We've hit the milestone at episode 7. So now we just got to breach through, like our friend Mitch Ray would say, we bust through that overhead resistance and then off we go to the races, bro. We've got a dragon on the way, W shape, bust through the W shape, 886, and then off we go, bro. What is it? Fibonacci extensions, dude. That's what we're reaching for.
We're Phoenix rising through the ashes, my brother. We've got through the lull. The universe wasn't ready for the truth. They've tried to keep us down. We've been censored. The forces that will are trying to keep us down, mate. But we're gonna rise through no matter what.
Bloody oath, love it, dude.
It's kind of an inner joke, but it's kind of a bit of a narrative where people say, I'm being shadow banned because you can't handle the truth. The government doesn't work.
That's right. Yeah. There's no confirmation bias at all. We're not stroking our own egos.
I'd have 1 million followers by now if it wasn't being shadow banned.
Yeah, exactly. It's the only reason we haven't got above 50 subscribers, all right? Just fucking don't ask any more questions, you bastards. Fantastic, man. So, no, all jokes aside, and love it. But so, there's been a lot of stuff going on, brother. There's been a lot of things that we've both.
Yeah, Yeah. Oh, sorry, you go.
No, no. I was just going to say that like we share a lot of interests. We have a lot of things in common that we focus on, but then we also have our own kind of separate interests and things that we really keep our fingers on the pulse of. I'm more a bit of a more of the political, economic kind of mundane, boring shit to most people, but stuff that I'm really into, and a little bit of history, but more recent history, not going back too much further than the last 100 years. But you're the things that you're really keeping a finger on the pulse of are stuff that I'd love to scratch the surface of and get your thoughts. And we've got a couple of clips lined up and a few different things that I'd really love to pick your brain about, bro.
Yeah, I mean, it all weaves together. So that's what we want to do on this show over time, is that we have our separate interests, we have our joint interests, but want to weave it together. So, yeah.
Absolutely,
But,
man.
there's a lot of different threads coalescing together. Like I really feel like we're going through the eye of the needle right now. And over the next 3 years, reality as we know it's going to shift completely. So the ability to discern what's going on in our own lives, the ability to know what truth is, to know what objective morality is, to know what natural law is, and the ability to see to be able to tune into our own intuition, but then also be able to look at current events and to see what's going on. Because as you'll see in these upcoming things as well, with the rise of AI, with the rise of the dead internet, with bots, the ability to like the filters that we're getting information through, the ability to know what's real is going to become a real skill. And so I'm looking forward to having a chat with you and getting your perspective on some of these things. So let's get into it, eh?
Awesome, man. Well, hey, before we do get right into it, I mean, I don't know, like, because I know you're like you have a better understanding of like astrology and things like that I'm not super aware of. But man, I feel like with the moon, I think is it a full moon tonight or was it last night? One of the two. It's like either last night or tonight. But I've just had so much stuff going on in my life just personally, and it's seeming a bit like there's a lot of turmoil and it's pretty tumultuous. And I just wonder if maybe there's like some other. I know that there's like these cycles and then bigger cycles outside like of these sort of smaller cycles that happen in our own life. But I just wonder if there is some of what you were just saying there where like there's these things that are really sort of coming to a head, and I'm just even noticing it like outside of sort of more of the like bigger picture stuff, just little microcosm stuff that's going on that is kind of causing me a lot of stress. And I'm just wondering if like all that is sort of tying into even this bigger picture.
Yeah, as above, so below. And I know it's an easy throwaway statement, but yeah, the short answer is that you're correct. Some sources would describe as a year of confusion. There's also, there is going to be like a lot of clunkiness, and I think that there's such major rapid things happening all at one time. It's really calling for us to kind of return to ourselves, go through our own stuff to deal with that nitty gritty, so then things can open up on the other side. And so all of these things are, in my opinion, this way that I kind of look at it, is that we've all got these things are all showing up so we can deal with them on a very grounded day-to-day basis. So then it can create space for this new stuff to come through. And what we're going to start to see is a lot of cognitive dissonance, a lot of brains breaking and this kind of a thing. And this is why it's really good to be on point, to stay centered and to kind of work through those things. And yeah, there's like super clunky, super challenging, confusing for people. And also like a good time to like really get to know oneself, and kind of the harder people fight what's going on and try and like latch on to this strong rationalistic version of how life is, the more they're going to struggle. Mark Passio would talk about, and David Icke would talk about the left-right imbalance in that regard. And so you've got to have the ability to do both. Yes, You need the hardcore science. Yes, we are intuitive beings. Yes, things like psychic abilities are going to come up. And this kind of as these events start to come through, like nuclear technology being obsolete, like consciousness playing a key role in the spiritual nature of what's going on with the quantum and 0 point energy. These are all seemingly throwaway statements, but they're all like based in the nature of reality kind of stuff, and is also related to the events that you're interested in as well, in regards to geopolitics. And as we get deeper into these subjects as well, we start to realize that nation states and companies, they are using psychics, they are using remote viewers, they are using astrological cycles to for certain events on certain days and false flags and all of that kind of thing. So yeah, there's certainly a lot to unpack as our journey unfolds here at the Great Retardation. But yeah, so that's kind of, we did an episode on the USS Liberty, for example, and there's some other um, events around that, like the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk project, and then there's also Project Looking Glass, and it's all to do with advanced technology and then the ability for time travel, so to speak. And then you've got the MH370 plane and current technology, and AI, which is all kind of coalescing around these subjects to do with changing the local field state, or to bend time and space. And it's not necessarily new technology, but old. And so one of the things that's been uncovered and been remembered is that we have had this technology for a long time. Doesn't matter what time frame you want to put on it. You can go back to the 60s and the 70s, and you can go back to the Nazis earlier than that, or you can go back to Tesla 120 years ago, 150 years ago, or you can go to a few hundred years ago, or you can go 12,000 years ago with ancient technology and the remembrance of this technology. But whichever way you slice and dice it, it's kind of all speaking to like remembering who we are as a species, remembering where we've come from, and um, people's ability to have coherence, and to integrate this kind of knowledge and wisdom into your daily life, and the ability to perceive a reality and to deal with reality. That's what part of this journey is going to be about as well, because there's going to be a whole shakeup of illusions. So, with what's going on with the digital control grid and Peter Thiel and transhumanism and the technocrats, and Palantir, and Elon Musk and space and the satellites and the financial systems and the breakthrough technology, and like the sheer amount of propaganda, like how you're getting your information and how you're processing that, especially through social media. um like all of these things, like there's so many illusions being broken, whether it's simple things like Dave Smith talking it through on Tucker Carlson recently, or on Joe Rogan about these different events, or his debate with
Douglas Murray.
old mate, um yeah, or whether it's Catherine Fitz going on Tucker, which we're about to show. I've been all over her information for a number of years, and when she's talking about, we'll get to this, but when she's talking about um you know um, cataclysmic events happening and that kind of thing, I've been one of those people that have been sending her that information. And her initial take was, "Oh well, it's coming. What are you going to do about it? Blah blah blah. Let's just not think about it." And I'm not saying that. Definitely not saying that I'm the one that blah blah blah. What I've been pressing that no, there are ways that we can survive and thrive during these events, and there's no need to be just because you have a reaction thinking, oh well, magnetic pole flip, everyone's fucked, so like what can I do about it? I'm just not even going to think about it. No, we have to come through this kind of trivium process, what Mark Passio talks about. um you know um you have to start with you know having good information come in and then processing it, so yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, dude, like I just thought about this, like as you were speaking so beautifully there, but you know that recent discovery, was it the Great Pyramid of Giza and the underground chamber? I mean, let me just, I think this will work. I've got just a picture like on a share screen here. Can you see that? Like, what's your take on that, bro? Like, what the fuck's going on there? Can you see that?
Yeah.
Like, what's that? I wonder what the fuck all this shit is. It seems that the pyramids potentially are just like the tip of the iceberg.
Just bring up the image in the middle with the blue things going down. There's a smaller image in the middle of the screen there with those.
This one here?
Below that. Yeah, the next to that one on the right of that.
Oh, this one here.
Yeah, that one. Yep. So one thing is that we do have to we have to kind of, I'm still waiting for a bit more data is one comment that I'll have. But yeah, there's a number of ways that we can go with that, and I kind of want to speak on this on a more dedicated episode. But there's a lot of information to do with the alignments of the pyramids. There's a lot of information to do with the second Nile, Ernil, in the Giza Plateau as well. There's information to do with it being a power grid, tapping into the ether as well. And then there's also, but they're not necessarily the theories that people have about what those chambers are. So they go down like quite a long way. But yeah, that's a paper that came out in the last year or so.
So wild. Like I know not like that's where I'm a complete novice. I have no information, or have never really delved into any of that. But just when I heard about that discovery, it's just gone, holy fuck. If my friend DJ Handicap, if he listens to this, which he is a regular listener to this show, I'm sure he'll be able to school me at least on some of the theories. So Andy, if you hear this, brother, give me a phone call and let's have a 15-hour conversation. I'm down.
Yeah, I mean, as I've kind of mentioned before, I was and I've said this a bit, but I was a couple of days away from doing a documentary over in Egypt, and part of the reason why I don't want to speak just now is I've kind of almost deliberately avoided some of the theories on it because I want to get it right when I do talk about it, because most people are wrong about these kind of things. Not saying that I'm an expert by any means, but yeah, I've spent a decent amount of time over with the chem at school and the people that live there, and Hakimori was the mystic there, and they live just near there. One of the things that they said was that there were actually 7 pyramids there back in the day. So, but yeah, I think that all of this is pointing towards the same stuff: advanced technology, also cataclysmic events. But then also, yeah, there's a lot of, this is not what you're talking about directly with below it and that kind of thing. But are they harnessing the energy from below? Are they doing alchemical processes? There's people doing chemical reaction kind of stuff, and that was one of the things that came up when I was over there as well. Was that the Queen's Chamber and the King's Chamber are actually for different chemical processes going through. So yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, let's get into that on a dedicated episode.
Absolutely, man. Fuck yeah. Keen for that, man. Okay, so where do you want to go now, bro? Do you want to have a look at the Catherine Tucker interview? Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me just get that queued up. Okay, so the first segment is we're going to look at so this is what should we know about the Bank of International Settlements? So let's kick that off now. And I'll just mute you quickly too, because my system just says that that's how it has to be, or else it'll sound like shit. Okay. All right, man. All right, let's go.
Well, but here's
Saudi
what
or something.
I call the Patriot Act the Control and Concentration of Cash Flow Act. Because one of the things that happened after 9/11, if you look at the history of the black budget and sort of secret financing, that the government uses for secret and classified projects. That pot of money had grown and grown and grown, and it had become very dysfunctional to try and get that money. Mortgage fraud, I believe, was one of the biggest sources, and that's why what I was doing sort of went into the heart of the problem. But the Patriot Act and that whole process was very successful at moving a lot more money onto the budget. In other words, it made it much easier to get enormous amounts of money for the national security state as a result of what happened. Now, whenever you do an operation like this, you stack functions, so it's only one of many goals. But it was very successful.
Boy, it went right over my head. I thought it was all about Muhammad Atta. I had no idea. I know you're laughing.
I want to tell you my church story.
Wait, hold on. There's so many threads here.
Yeah, there's a lot of threads.
Yeah, there's a lot of threads. I don't want to let it continue to hang in the air, this question of space. You sort of threw that out parenthetically, but I've never heard that before. So you believe, going back 30 years, that people in the U.S. government and in the finance world wanted money for space.
Yeah, it wasn't U.S. government. It was the central banking. If you look at the group of people who meet through the BIS.
What's that?
The BIS is the Bank of International Settlements, and it's the central bank of central banks.
Where is that located?
It's in Basel, Switzerland, and it has 63 of the most powerful central banks as its members, and the New York Fed and the Fed are both shareholders. They became shareholders in 1994.
In one sentence, what's the purpose of the Bank of International Settlements?
Okay, so there are two things you need to know about the Bank of International Settlements.
I'm not sure my brain's big enough for this, but keep going.
It is.
Okay.
It has sovereign immunity.
What does that mean?
It's above the law.
It's its own country.
Right. It's its own country. It has its own police force. And essentially, other than one of its staff being in a car accident or, minor things, no one has the legal authority to move against it. Okay. It has sovereign immunity.
I'm just going to pause it there for 1 second, dude, because I think it's worth just even commenting on that. I've unmuted you now too, man. But what the fuck? I'm someone who has looked into central banking more than just the average layman. But I didn't know to the extent how much authority and power the Bank of International Settlements had in that regard. That it's virtually its own country and has complete sovereign immunity. Even in relation to where it is in Switzerland there. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, there's a lot of related subjects that are not even related to what you're just talking about, huge amounts of underground stuff going on in Switzerland as well. And then Catherine will talk about how they control something like 64 of the largest central banks around the world. So, yeah, we do a lot of work on natural law and sovereignty and stuff for the individual, and then also to do with monetary systems and usury and all of that. And yet the fact that the Bank of International Settlements has got sovereign immunity is rarely brought up, if at all, right? You've read all these books by these guys, right?
Yeah, they're the libertarian anarchist analysis of central banking in general is obviously it's a corrupt cabal of people who are running roughshod on any given society. It doesn't matter what central. If your nation has a central bank, which most do, then they have the ability to counterfeit money and create inflation. That's where all the inflation essentially comes from. They have complete control over the commercial banking system, and it's generally a critique on central banks, but it's just interesting to try and sort of comprehend a central bank of central banks. There's just this whole other layer of fuckery which I suppose it's not surprising because they're, corrupt criminal scumbags but it sounds like that so even the central banks of any given nation have to answer to the Bank of International Settlements. It's all sort of new to me. So like, I'd just be really interested to do just like a major deep dive. Maybe I've got to listen to some more Catherine Austin Fitz information.
Yeah. So what I'll also recommend John Titus, who's got
You there, dude? Yeah. Oh yeah, John Titus. Yeah. Listen to his stuff.
So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah, I was just saying, John Titus has got a series called "The War for Bankocracy," the War on Bankocracy. Yeah.
The War on Bankocracy, was it?
Yeah, just give me it's on the Solari.
That's okay. We don't have to fully confirm it now, but
yeah,
Bankocracy. I'm sure if I just if I go to
the War for Bankocracy.
The War for Bankocracy. Okay, for Bankocracy.
Yeah.
I think I spelled that right. Probably didn't.
Yeah.
I'm terrible speller.
Yeah, so he goes into what is a central bank and all of these subjects.
Yeah. I'm enthralled. I'm fascinated. Anyway, let's continue. But I just needed to pause because I think that is worth just emphasizing
crazy.
How crazy just the conceptually how like it's crazy enough as just a central bank, just the idea of a central bank and how that operates is like, enough to make your head explode. Then to think of like a central bank of central banks. Anyway, I'm just belaboring the point, but it's
people are like, oh, well, how are they going to take trillions of dollars? Well, now you know how, and she'll get into that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Let's continue. Fucking hell.
Just mute me.
That's number one.
Yeah. Sorry, I better do that. Thank you for reminding me.
Number two, it can move money and hold it on its on its balance sheet and manage money secretly. So if I want to, I'm grossly oversimplifying. If I want to steal 21 trillion from the U.S. government and park it on the balance sheet of the BIS, it can move it anywhere in the world and it can keep it on its balance sheet secretly.
Why would there be an organization? First of all, where does its power? Like, who empowered it to have sovereign immunity and the right?
It was created after World War I, and sort of collected its powers and got going in the 30s. And it was created in theory to manage the reparations of the German government. But if you read the real history, it was because the Bank of England and the central bankers wanted an entity that had sovereign immunity. They wanted to be able to move money secretly. So, for example, if you look at what happened during World War II and all the money that was moving back and forth between the Germans and Americans, Dulles was over in Switzerland helping to manage all these transfers back and forth. So there's a wonderful book called The Tower of Basel by a wonderful Hungarian journalist where he documents and describes the whole history of the Bank of International Settlements. And if you want to understand power in this world, understanding how the Bank of International Settlements and the plumbing of the central banking system works is very, very important.
I've always been worried that if I knew more that I would become mentally ill.
No.
No.
So I just have to say that reality is sort of the door that you open to find real solutions. So
absolutely. Hit me, dude.
Yeah. So, am I unmuted?
Yep. You're unmuted.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because there's a common theme, and it's especially as we want to keep bringing this back to natural law. Knowing the truth is not going to create mental illness. If it might temporarily bring up a whole bunch of irrational thoughts and thought loops and kind of what could be perceived as mental illness. But the adage goes, the truth will set you free. So just trying to pretend things that aren't the way that they are and fighting the nature of reality. And, I just want to kind of I've been through a lot of this myself, so I can speak to direct experience. This process of letting go, this process of surrendering, this process of allowing what is to be, rather than this rational, this scientific kind of very one side brain way of going about things, and being like, oh, okay. And I've even got a friend who I've they've been catching up with, and there's almost like the, oh, I don't want to go there because I don't have time right now, or I've got family, or whatever it is, and I just want to, as someone, I just want to encourage people to go towards the objective truth, and it can be scary, and it can kind of open a can of worms, but the way is through this. You're not going to escape it.
Yeah, totally, dude. If I can just interject there, and sorry to cut you off, and I loved everything you were saying there. I totally agree. Like, I reckon like a good analogy is just what I'm going through right now, just on a really small personal scale. So as I mentioned earlier, like I'm building a house right now. I don't even know if I've mentioned it to you yet, bro, but I had to fire my carpenter. I've never fired anybody ever in my life. And I had to do it, and both my partner, my fiance, and I had to do this. But it wasn't. So he made like a big fuck up, like he fucked up, made a big mistake, and then it was only because my brother-in-law caught it. He's also a carpenter. He's in his 40s and a bit more experienced. He caught it. He was like, "Hey, dude, like he's totally missed this. He's overlooked it, or he's purposely done it. But I think he's just inexperienced and overlooked it. You better bring it up with him." And then I brought it up with him, and then he lied to me. And he lied and said, no, that's not necessary. And I had him on loudspeaker. He didn't know that I had my brother-in-law there. And then my brother-in-law's just like head down, shaking his head, just going like, he's telling you porkies, dude. I got off the phone. And then he confirms like, no, it's a big fat fucking lie. Anyway, and then I confronted him a second time, then I confronted him a third time, and then he continued to dig his heels in and keep lying. So then we got rid of him, right? But like the point of like the analogy is like, if my brother-in-law didn't pick up on it, the mistake is still there. I just would have been ignorant of it. And I probably wouldn't have noticed the mistake at all. And it was like past the point of where like, because I'm doing it as an owner builder, so it gets certified at every crucial step of the way. But this was like, this particular fuck up wasn't something that a certified would, like no one would have picked up on it. I would not have known until like years down the track. Then I would have known, you know what I mean? But like, yeah, like I think what I'm trying to say is like, I could have just put my head in the sand. Like my brother-in-law could have just not told me about this big fuck up. And then I'd just be like, oh, life's great. Everything's fantastic. I've got this, whatever, you know what I mean? But like, and it was painful. It was like really frustrating and really annoying to have to learn this information. But ultimately I'm better off for it because now I can rectify the issue, get someone else in to come in and fix it and, and then move forward. And, it's going to cost me a little bit extra money, but in the end, I'm so much better off knowing than not knowing. Yeah.
Totally agree. And it's to do with the foundations as well. There's a lot of gold in there with what you just said. And I'm certainly a person that has been more in the other corner where it's like, oh, who gives a shit, and then dealt with it later. And I've learned that lesson the hard way. So that's a perfect analogy of, even though it's, seemingly it crosses over into day-to-day life because it's like as above, so below, the micro of the macro, all of that, it's these things fractal out because it's a fractal nature of reality.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, like just in regards to sort of more, like bigger picture things, and sort of what Catherine Austin Fitz is getting at here, and just like the actual nature of reality, as much as most people do not want to confront it. It's like, that's why I reckon the Matrix, the red pill analogy is so fitting, and it's, kind of becoming a little bit cliche, maybe just in our circles. But and also like I think some like sort of like the manosphere kind of masculine reaction to like all the, you know, woke feminist crap is like they've now hijacked the term and they use this red pill term in a different way. So I don't mean it in like a, you know, masculine you know, fucking manosphere way.
The objective truth.
Yeah, it's just like the analogy like in the movie is like you can take the red pill in the Matrix movie, you can take the red pill and actually see the objective truth and how things are and the nature of reality and how fucked up it is and that you're all just cogs in this machine and you're slaves and whatever else. Or you can take the blue pill, go completely back to sleep and forget this conversation ever happened and go back to living your day-to-day life, you know? But yeah, so yeah, go ahead.
That's absolutely correct. And I also want to affirm that where that leads to is understanding that we are the divine and we're co-creating this reality and we're far more powerful than any slavery system or anything being imposed upon us, because the trick is to believe that they or the elites or whatever have got all of the power when they don't. So that's when we start saying no and we start coming back into our own power by knowing ourselves and by being able to create through this system. That's when we go beyond, and that's what, you know, that's how Matrix ends up, is by going through that process. So one of the labels that is being thrown out there by the zeitgeist is that even by acknowledging or talking about this stuff is that you're a black pillar, or what about the solutions, bro? And this is what also got thrown at Mark Passio as well. And it's like, this is the solution. You know, what we're talking about, and taking action on it and doing content about natural law and objective reality and this reasoning, like, you know, and you know, like the action that you took in your daily life, that is taking action. You know, that is the solution on a local level, on a real day-to-day level. So yeah, that's kind of, I think we kind of hit that from all angles there. But yeah, I just wanted to stop on that because you know, my version of that was I went to the Amazon in 2014 and I was like just absolutely fed up, and I was like, I just want what is real. And I went through that process of what people are scared of, and it can be terrifying. And at the same time, it completely changed my life and guided me to really beautiful outcomes and a very deep connection to myself and to divine, however you want to phrase it, without getting too airy-fairy about it. But, you know, yeah, just kind of saying the same thing, but you're never going to get to the causal factors and kind of that greater sense of self if we keep bullshitting ourselves and telling ourselves a lie and looking ourselves in the mirror and going through our shadow work and saying, hey, actually I'm wrong, you know, about this stuff, and also saying no to slavery. And again, people don't want to acknowledge that it's there, but you know, that, you know, first we've got to understand the true nature of the problem before we can create solutions.
Totally agree, brother. All right, should we get back into it?
All right, let's keep going.
Let's go, dude. Let's go. Where'd the thing go? Okay, cool. All right, let's do it. And let me mute you.
So there are real solutions, and the biggest obstacle to implementing them is nobody wants to face it. So I used to have a pastor who would
Nobody
say,
wants to face the truth of how things actually work.
Nobody wants to face the truth. And I understand that, because the hardest thing I ever had to do, Tucker, was look in the mirror and say, I'm the patsy. I was the assistant secretary of housing. I didn't know, and I went along, and I didn't face this. I should have seen this faster. I should have said, I'm the patsy. And it's sometimes it's harder than facing death to admit that you've been part of, you know, a big lie and you've been tricked.
As someone who advocated for the Iraq War on television, I've lived this to some extent.
Oh, no.
Yes, I did.
Well, you know, part of facing this is you have to forgive yourself. You really have to. But I used to have a pastor who would say, if we can face it, God can fix it. Because you have to understand, we can't fix it. There are many, many things we can do to change the course. And I believe ultimately freedom can prevail. And there's many things we can do to help that happen. But ultimately, This is a spiritual war, and you have to call on God. You have to call on the divine. And that's where the battle is ultimately going to be decided. And that means, literally, I believe this is true, the divine intelligence cannot go to work unless we're willing to face it. We have to look at it. We have to pray. We have to ask for help. And we have to deal with it. And the real solutions will be cultural. There'll be millions of people acting in their own life, refusing to be controlled, individually. So
very, very wise what you just said. I think it's true, and thank you for saying that. I want to just go one more time to the space question. So you said that people with power at the central banks decided that we need to sort of colonize space or move towards space. Did that happen?
So here's what happened, and we have 2 wrap-ups, and I think I sent them to you. One is we published in 2015 called Space Here We Go, and it's got a picture of a businessman, taking off in a spaceship. And then we, in 2017, after a couple of the big investment banks wrote big things about space investment, we wrote one called The Space-Based Economy. And then we track space on Solari Report, so I would refer you to that. But I think, first of all, you've seen a lot of capital centralized into a few billionaires who then reinvest that money in space. So Musk, Bezos, so clearly there's a centralization of capital and a reinvestment.
So the idea of space is just biggest possible picture. Why would you be interested in space? I say this as someone who's not.
Right. So let me give you a couple reasons why. First of all, the miners are looking for a variety of different resources. So there are practical reasons, if you can get the cost down, that you would want to do asteroid mining.
I just want to pause it there quickly and just talk about that asteroid mining point. Like she's right saying like if, and I think that's the key word, like if the miners can get the cost down, that there's like supposedly all these like an abundance of minerals and whatnot, and precious metals and things in these asteroids, but I just don't see how they could keep the cost down. I don't see how that's a viable thing at all. Like that'd just be insane. I mean, there'd have to be some crazy technological breakthrough, which I think you've been talking about over the last several months and maybe even a year. But it's just, maybe I'm just naive, but I just don't see how that would even be possible.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of points on that, but I think that the mining is probably the least of my interests in that.
Yeah.
But I guess I will say that with the advanced technology, 2 points. One is that you can keep the cost down because you can essentially teleport it, and have 0 point energy rather than rockets. And then the other point is that you may not even need the minerals themselves because you can essentially create them through transmutation, through other advanced technology. So I'm not even sure if you'd need to mine it regardless.
That's a great
point. I know
point.
that sounds like a very wacky statement, but I'll circle back around later.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't know, like all this shit would sound wacky to most people listening to this. But all right, cool. Let's get back into it. Yeah, I don't know. My autistic brain's just like, I just don't fucking understand. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, with typical rockets and mining stuff, it does sound super dumb.
Yeah.
But it's also like a cover story. The whole rocket thing is a cover story. One other point is that Elon Musk's grandfather was in charge of transhumanism or technocracy in the 30s in Canada, and Bezos's father was part of Navy intelligence and rockets around the time of NASA. So, and they're both into the rockets, and so basically, I believe the whole rocket thing is basically a psyop just to get everyone distracted and focused on it. And they both are already very aware of breakthrough energy, and they're just getting everyone just to look up and go, "Oh, look at big boom, big rocket, or whatever."
Yeah.
As basically part of the circus.
Yeah. Not surprising.
And it's already intergenerational. So.
Yeah. All right, let's go.
Big one, the big economic one, is control is most easily implemented by satellites. So you want to put up a whole ring of satellites that combined with telecommunications can basically help run the control grid. And not just the control grid in the West, the control grid. If you're going to shift huge amounts of money globally, how are you going to track and enforce that your money is being properly invested when you need a control grid globally? So I think that's part of it. The last thing, and I don't know the answer to this, is I think there is real concern about geophysical risks.
Yeah.
And one way to deal with that is to make sure we don't bet the ranch on one planet.
So to that, if we could just linger on that, thank you for that. That all makes sense. If we just linger on one question, so geophysical risks. So we've been lectured for, 30 years now about climate change. Climate change is obviously an ongoing feature of life on this planet. The glaciers.
It's just an op.
So, well, of course, it's an op, and I think people have figured that out.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that smart, highly informed people aren't worried about geophysical risks. They are, and I know some of them.
Right.
So what do you think those risks are that honest, smart people who are interested in self-preservation and thriving, like what are the risks they're worried about?
So I think the first is a solar minimum, where you get big drops in the economy and the agriculture and you can't feed the population.
Right.
So
because there are changes in climate because of the distance of the Earth from the sun.
Right.
And that changes.
Right. So we know throughout history we go through periods of solar minimum.
Solar minimum is the name?
I think it's called solar minimum. I'm not an expert in any of this. So
they are worried about climate change, but they don't think it's coming from your suburban.
Right. It's not coming from human behavior. Now, there are environmental problems coming from human behavior.
For sure.
And
that's for sure.
Right. So that's one.
And do you think that risk is real?
I don't know.
For the record, I have one friend who's very well informed who has convinced me that is real. That they're very concerned about water.
If you look at the history, of solar minimums, and you look at what it does to, there was a Russian, I can't remember if he's an economist or science, that did a lot of research on the stock market and solar activity, and if you're the central bankers and you're in charge of managing the financial system, that reality would make me very nervous. So,
okay.
So I think there's something there worth understanding. The other thing is it appears to me, if you go back through history, every 10,000, 12,000 years, we have, some kind of huge disaster.
An extinction event.
A near extinction event. So I don't know if you've ever read the science fiction book, Three-Body Problem.
No.
It's fascinating. It's one of the top Chinese science fiction, and it's about
I've read no Chinese science fiction.
Okay.
I'm feeling very ignorant this morning.
No, because here's the thing. I'm just trying to figure out what in the world's going on.
Yeah, amen. Well, I'm in the same place.
And so that always, as you know, that always leads you to the most.
It does.
Right.
It does.
Right. So in one, I think the thing that got me to read Three-Body Problem was Obama made some cryptic comment about people ought to read this book. It was like, hint, hint, here are the problems I'm dealing with. And the Three-Body Problem is about other bodies that come into the solar system, and it's impossible to predict their trajectory. And then when they do, they create this catastrophic flooding and earthquakes and all this other stuff. Anyway, but I think that whether it's a pole shift, magnetic pole shift is one of the, theories of what causes these events. But there is a history of near extinction events. And one of the things that I've looked at, because I'm trying to figure out, between fiscal 1998 and fiscal 2015, there were 21 trillion of undocumentable adjustments in the U.S. government. If you go to our website, missingmoney.solera.com, we have years and years of documentation, including the government financials that show this. And so the question is, where's all this money going? And one of the things I've looked at in the process of looking at where all this money is going is the underground base and city infrastructure and transportation system that's been built. And
I'm sorry?
yes. So we have built an extraordinary number of underground bases and supposedly transportation systems. Some of these are some of these are documented as part of the national security infrastructure. I think there are many more. So
In the United States?
in the United States, on all over the world, but from 2021 to 2023, I took one of the smartest subscribers in the Salieri Report network, and he and I spent 2 years collecting all the data and all the allegations on underground bases, and then we systematically went through and tried to estimate our guess. This is totally a guess of how many underground bases, both underground in the United States, but also underground under the ocean around the United States. And our estimate was 170 with a transportation network connecting them.
And what would be the purpose?
The purpose, if you thought you were going to get a near extinction event.
Yeah, man. You're unmuted, brother.
Yeah, so a few things to touch on there just before she goes any further. So she's right to frame it as near extinction.
Yes.
And that was, I think, that was one of the things I was pushing back on originally, was because early on she kept saying, oh, well, it's just going to be extinction, so what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's near extinction and there are things that we can do. I want to assure people, if you do look into this subject, there are plenty of measures that you can do and that we can survive and thrive it. So I just want to put that out there. There's a lot of misinformation on this subject, a lot of predictions. But basically, the stuff that I follow is that 2050. I'm not one into predictions or dates. That being said, 2040 and 2046 are some dates, and then also in the lead up, going without power and that kind of thing. But the person that she's getting that information from mostly is Ben Davidson, and there are other sources from Space Weather News. So if you go to his YouTube channel, you can find playlists with lots of information there. And then the other thing is that to one of these other threads is that the oral wisdom stories, a lot of them are about cataclysm, and a lot of them are about how to breed out of on the other side of cataclysms, and how to keep the genes strong. And the reason why it's kept orally is because during these events, information can be lost. And that's why we have these ancient sites with these symbology and hieroglyphs and information stored where it won't be damaged, and you can see it on the other side and figure it out. And that's why you can also see that humanity have declined over time, and they've tried to recreate things as well, but they were obviously like a later civilization, and then they've tried to reclaim sites. So that's a theme that you'll see all throughout the ancient world as well. But I wanted to get all of that out of the way first, because this particular subject, and I've even heard people already start to, like, what's going on now is there's so much going on with breakthrough energy, the UFO stuff, magnetic pole flip. There's all these coalescing things, and then everyone shoots at all of this stuff to muddy the waters.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've noticed is that people start talking about a cataclysmic event in 2027, which is not real at all, but it's put out there. So people like 2012, which was based on an incorrect dating system, is put out there so everyone kind of writes it off. Oh yeah, you said it was going to be 2027 and it didn't happen. Or you're just involved in fear porn and like all of this kind of stuff. And it's all meant to like muddy the waters so you can't really tell what's going on. And very similar to the UFO file and aliens and all of that kind of stuff, and why people are trying to deflect away from the 0 point energy and the MH370 video files, and why I've taken a particular interest in that. Is because you've got like hard evidence that can't be like, oh, did you see it or you didn't see it, or some lights in the sky or in some secret base that no one can see or whatever. And yeah, she's about to get into the underground bases now, which is related to partially to that partially towards continuity of government and partially related to breakthrough energy, which you'll get to as well. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of circle in a few of those subjects because the deep underground military bases has been a common theme with a lot of different things, whether it's aliens, advanced technology, breakthrough energy, secret stuff or whatever.
Dude, I'd never heard anything about underground bases until this interview that Catherine did with Tucker, and that's really displaying how little I listen to Catherine. Pretty much the only time I do listen to her is when you're saying, "Hey, dude, we need to watch this quarterly report wrap up." So I need to get more onto her stuff because she's just a wealth of knowledge. But what I was going to also say was what was the base? The US military base that Ashton Forbes was saying Diego Garcia. So there was something recently. I think it's to do with the tensions with Israel and Iran and Israel trying to drag America into a fight with Iran. But there was something that I heard recently. I think it was Colonel Douglas McGregor going on about the Diego Garcia base and how that would, that would play some strategic role in this whole Middle Eastern conflict that's going on right now. But anyway, only reason why I bring it up is because the only other time I'd ever heard that base ever mentioned was when Ashton Forbes was mentioning it in relation to the MH370 disaster.
There's a lot going on at that base, and there's also in that general area is connected with ancient Lemuria as well on the time of Mu. So Lemuria is another thing to look up. It's also, the South Pacific is where the Polynesians and the Wayfinders and Easter Island and the Moai and advanced technology and all of that is and also like nuclear weapons testing in that general area. But there's some sites to explore in that general vicinity, but there's also a current case with Diego Garcia with the US and the UK. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but they're potentially like letting it go to the UK. So I'm not sure what kind of thing is going on there, because in the old days they basically took it away from the locals, like the local indigenous people, and it's a whole thing there. But yeah, there's like a thing to do with who owns it with US and UK going on right now as well.
I wrote down the book that Catherine referenced there for anyone who wants to do a deep dive into the Bank of International Settlements, and I'm going to be jumping on Amazon straight after this and purchasing it, and that's going straight onto my the next book I'm reading after I finish this book on the Waco tragedy, Penetrating the Web of Lies Surrounding the Waco Tragedy by David T. Hardy. Phenomenal book. But anyway, okay, let's do it, bro. Let's get straight back into it.
Just very quickly,
go ahead.
Body problem book that she referenced. I haven't read that, but my understanding is that may even be compulsory reading by the FBI or something. I heard some kind of a thing, some little tidbit somewhere. So I think that I think that it's there's a few connections in there as well.
Wow. All right, let's go.
So to me, there are two purposes. You have so many activities going on that you need to keep secret, that you're basically building the capacity to, for example, if you're doing a secret space program, you need to platform it from, things that can't be seen. But I think if you're worried about a near extinction event, that's.
So I know nothing about this other than my only window into it. I knew a contractor who worked on one in Washington, in the city of Washington, D.C. Right. And I remember him telling me about a power box, like a transformer box on Constitution Avenue that he told me, because he worked on it personally, was actually the exit, the egress from the White House. That was kind of by vehicle. I thought that was, I was like, really? He goes, oh, yeah, no, I installed it. I know. And I thought, well, that's kind of crazy that in the middle of this big city where I lived I was on Constitution Avenue every day, that you could build something like that without me knowing it. Under the VP's house at the Naval Observatory, same thing. I think most people know that. Next to my brother's house on Macomb Street in D.C. But I always thought that was like preparation for nuclear war. Like, I didn't really think about it that much.
Some of it is, it's preparation for catastrophe.
So, but you think that there are facilities like that in other places outside D.C.?
Oh, yeah. So if you're interested, we have a great interview. I did an interview of Richard Dolan on underground bases on the Solari Report, and it's sort of an introduction to the topic, and it's based on a lot of the research of a guy named Richard Sauter, who is very hard to interview. So Richard kind of went through all the material. And clearly it's, I don't know if you ever saw, Washington Post did a project, it was in 2010 or 12, called Top Secret America. And one of the reporters, it was a team of...
Did you want me to pause it, man?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, sorry, just by the way, when like, even though I've got it muted in the OBS, I can still hear you when you talk. Just
no worries,
just because I can hear you through the Zoom.
Maybe. Okay, yeah, no worries. I can maybe we can move on to the next section. But yeah, I hung out with name drop, but yeah, I hung out with these guys at Catherine's event in Uluru, and Richard Dolan. He's kind of I've got his book at home on UFOs. He's a great researcher, but in my opinion, not to personal attack or anything, but he's gone a bit backwards in my opinion. He reports positively on a lot of bullshit in the UFO world. So I'm not really a huge fan of that. Seems to have gone a bit sideways since COVID, but he is a very solid researcher. But yeah, I just wanted to keep it moving along to maybe the free energy part specifically.
Yeah, the very next section, sorry to cut you off, but the very next section is the government's secret energy sources, which we can skip ahead to that.
So let's get to that part if we can, and then we can do there's a little snippet there to do with the masterminds behind the central banks, and then we're done with it.
Cool, brother. All right, let's do it. Let's do that. If I can find my cursor. I know Mark Passio said to always use a mouse and never use your touchpad, and I'm going against his advice right now, which is he would be very disappointed in me. All right, let's go.
Conferences on breakthrough energy, and they brought together breakthrough energy inventors from around the world. And you can see all the videos up on the internet, and really went through the history from Tesla on of different inventors who have discovered and claimed different innovations with breakthrough energy. And I'm convinced that this energy exists. And I'm also convinced, if you look at a lot of the really fast ships, flying around the planet, that they're not using classical electricity.
They're not using.
Right. So
they're not running on diesel.
Right. Exactly. Right. So.
Yeah. So we know that I'm sorry I get so caught up in the details, but we know that there are quite a number of large underground bases in the United States. We can state that as fact.
Right.
Sorry, I just got to pause it. I love how you can just like see Tucker's mind completely blown. He's just like still trying to grasp. He's like, wait, so we know there's underground bases. What the fuck? Anyway, all right. Get back to it.
And then the question becomes, of course, like if they're connected to the power grid, if they're pulling off just a conventional natural gas electricity generation station, you could know that and measure it, but you think they have independent energy sources. Of course they do.
So one of the questions I have that I think is really important is when you look at breakthrough energy, if you are running the planet, so I have this nickname for the committee at the top, Mr. Global. If you were Mr. Global, you would not want to implement breakthrough energy on a widespread basis for a variety of reasons, one of which is everybody got a hold of it and weaponized it. It could be very dangerous.
Why?
My understanding is that literally one small group of people could take this, with no sovereign powers or, just organized crime and use it in a way that could weaponize it and make it very dangerous. I'm not a scientist. I don't really understand.
Right, but energy by definition is dangerous. Gasoline's dangerous.
Right.
Right, electricity is dangerous. Of course, nuclear energy is dangerous.
Right, but if you're the risk manager and you're in charge of managing the planet, this has more disruption capability, both weaponization, economic. Suddenly everybody's free to do whatever they want, and so they're much harder to control. So if you're Mr. Global and you have the capacity to dramatically lower the energy cost, the other danger is then population skyrockets, and you're concerned about that. So if you're Mr. Global and you're worried about what will happen if you bring this technology out, it's very convenient to get complete control. If you don't trust the population to be environmentally responsible or politically responsible, then complete control.
So we have a good mutual friend who's been bothering me for years to interview you. You've got to interview her. I'm
Why?
so glad. Well, just because he said this is like the best informed, smartest, most reasonable, mainstream, sane person I know of you. He said this, and I was like, yeah, okay. Anyway, and we're just really glad we did this interview because you're blowing my mind up and down. So how convinced are you that breakthrough energy, alternate forms of energy, non-publicly disclosed forms of energy are in use by the U.S. government?
I think there's a very high chance that they're in some kind of use in a very controlled, secret way.
Yeah. Well, there are tons of indications, and you've had a number of people, like at the contractor level, like I'm a federal contractor, electrician, or a concrete guy or whatever, and I was working on this underground facility. There are a number of people who come forward to say this, and I saw what appeared to be some brand new form of energy I didn't understand.
Right.
Insane people too. Sean Ryan, who's a friend of mine, wonderful guy, honest man, who's a podcaster, did an interview with this guy who was just like a random blue collar guy.
Yeah. So I'll just unmute you. There you go, bros. Far away.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, that was the main point. Yeah, like the breakthrough technology. So if you want to just go to like who's funding it, and then we can get to the AI part, and then we can kind of coalesce a few things together, and then we can move on to the Middle East.
Yep, cool, man. Okay, so let me get back to this. So the who's funding it, so that hopefully will be a chapter. Who are the masterminds behind central banks?
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
yep,
yeah.
All right, let's get that queued up.
By the taxpayer and keep on going.
So now is the point of the conversation where I have to ask the obvious question, which is, who are these people? So can you name some of the people who you believe are making these decisions, whose decisions are effectively, as you just said, above the law, have effective immunity?
Right. So that's the question, sort of who is Mr. Global?
Yeah.
And my experience is the bureaucracy that sort of runs things is the central banking bureaucracy. So we've described the BIS and the central bankers. So think of the planet as a house. So you have the house, then you have financing the house, that's the mortgage. Then you have the insurance, and if you don't have the insurance, then you have the equity in the house, right? And the insurance layer is very, very important to make sure that the equity is protected, right? Okay. So you got the real assets, you've got the banking system, you've got the insurance system, and then you've got the owners. So in my experience, if you go to the BIS and you look at the systemically important institutions and the members, that's the bureaucracy that runs the debt and the transaction system. So the transactions. Because the whole thing depends on being able to swap and transact. The insurance group is very important for the reasons you just described, same as on your house. And then the question is, who are the real owners? And that's the mystery. And I've spent my whole life trying to figure out who are the real owners. And basically, from what experience I've had, if you know their name, they're not one of the important owners.
I got to pause it there for 1 second, because this is a point that Tobias Nuttall from the Waking World podcast with Dale has been constantly harping on, that verbatim. if you know their name, then they're not the real people in control and in power. And that was something that was pretty hard for me to grapple with because, I'm a very whatever, like needing evidence, names, dates, places, logic, rationale, type perspective. And then Toby's teaching me about fucking secret societies and the occult and fucking all this hectic stuff. And yeah, he firmly believes that the people that are out in the public and the names and the face of different companies and organizations and governments are not the real movers and shakers.
Yep.
It was like, it's just like, I don't know, it's just like hard for me to, like, I understand it, I suppose, but it's like, I don't know, just hard for me to wrap my head around. I'm just like, well, fuck, like, I just want to know fucking who's, and then that was fascinating to hear Catherine say, it's like, look, she's been at this for fucking however long, like a big chunk of her life, and she doesn't know, but she knows that the people who we perceive as the ones in control, that ain't it either.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can leave that interview there, and I can just add in like the main points of what she just says later on and whatever. But she basically says intergenerational wealth and family funds.
Yeah.
And the thing to remember, and shout out to Toby, and the thing to remember with all of this, with mystery schools and secret societies and people that are aware of the occult and all that kind of thing, this knowledge has been hidden for good and bad reasons, and it's occulted for a reason, for hundreds of years, thousands of years, like whatever it may be. And so, yeah, like, and when you're at that level, like, it's obviously you don't want your name out there, right? Like, you just want to be able to have these pools of funds and to be able to maybe on some level you've got some managers or whatever that do want to be seen, but, and I'm not claiming to know it all either, but yeah, I mean, you'd expect that these people would not want their name anywhere, especially if we're talking about intergenerational wealth that's been going on for a very long time. One of the things that she mentions is that she believes that the Harvard Endowment Fund is one of the main intergenerational pools of money, and the current issue going on with Trump and the government is a bit of a distraction because he's trying to get to that those pools of funds. And this ties in with the story where yourself and me, we did an episode that we didn't record around Whitney Webb, and Jeffrey Epstein, and one of Epstein's, he keeps coming around, and that network keeps coming around with all of this stuff because, aside from the child abuse and human trafficking and all that kind of stuff, his main thing was his actual main thing was financial money laundering. And then also the biologics, like the transhumanism stuff. And then they're also very into Atlantis, which is where a lot of these subjects dovetail as well. But yeah, he had a lot to do with Harvard. And so it's no surprise there. And then even the kind of recent revelations to do with COVID coming from North Carolina instead of Wuhan and all of that. I've been talking to someone that, there's a guy called Charles Lieber as well, to do with Harvard, I believe. You can fact check me on that. But yeah, but he's also potentially that came from Harvard rather than North Carolina as well. So yeah, that's kind of like, that's all I wanted to cover on that call, on that show, because interestingly, you wouldn't think that the Harvard Endowment Fund would be one of the main controllers on the earth. But when you think about it, they're able to get top talent. They're able to get, tax exemptions like the Vatican and these kind of things. They're able to, have things. Yeah.
And just to be clear too, hey, Nick, so when you say the Harvard Endowment, that's not talking about Harvard University per se. That's like some bigger, like the university is just under the umbrella of the endowment. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. Well, fuck, man, we got to do some sleuthing, brother. We got to bloody look into that more.
And then it gets back to, what both Toby's been studying for a long time as well, and then also
because he talks about. I was going to interject before. Sorry to cut you off there, but he talks a lot about this intergenerational wealth. Bloodline, that this is really at the core of whoever these movers and shakers are. It's like they've been around for a long time. They keep it very close knit and keep it in these bloodlines.
Yep. Yeah, and this is like just a tidbit that I saw on X. This could be completely wrong, but I also even saw that King Charles has been visiting Romania for the last 25 years, and that he's got bloodlines connected to Vlad the Impaler, which is like what Dracula's connected to. It could be complete bullshit, but yeah, that was something that came up as well. And while I'm talking about Romania, one of the things I've been on is these like time devices and that advanced technology. And they built a place in Romania in 1999 as well. So yeah, there's some stuff going on there. But that's a good segue. If you bring up that tweet that Brian wrote to do with AI before we move on to the Middle East, and then we can.
So let me. Excuse me. Can I bring that up any bigger? How do I zoom in? Oh, shit, sorry. Hang on, I got the wrong thing. There we go, try that. There we go. Did you want to read that, bro? Sorry.
AGI.
You can see it?
You can read it, bro.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah, you can read it.
Sorry, just for the listeners out there and the viewers, I've got a share screen for Nick to see, and he's got to see the whole OBS studio, and so I really just threw him under the bus there because the screen he'd be trying to read off would be miniature compared to what I can see. Okay, AGI, or artificial general intelligence, as defined in 2024, was achieved, but not publicly, on February 6, 2025. Most would not hear about it until 2028 for an array of reasons that do not make much sense in 2035. So what does all that mean, bro?
Yeah. There's a lot going on there, because everything is much older than what we're led to believe, like even to the fact of the technocracy already being implemented, to governments being run with artificial intelligence, to the MH370 plane being zapped with AGI already being achieved. But just on a normie level, basically what they're saying is that it has already been achieved. And this guy's he says in the comments, like, he's never been wrong on this kind of stuff previously. Like, he's not just some dude, like, this guy's serious as. But what he's alluding to there is we're starting to get into time dilation when he says, like, in the references to 2028 and 2035, is basically that time is not linear. And I believe my read on it is that once AGI is achieved, you're starting to get into timeline manipulation, and that's where you're starting into the end of the Philadelphia experiment, the Project Montauk, and the thing I was just mentioning, the base in Romania. Things start to get slippery, and we can unpack this more in future episodes. But we're starting to get into technology that manipulates time and space for not only travel, but also getting information from the future and bringing it into now, and to change timelines. And like, it sounds very wacky, but it's been around for quite a long time as well, with Project Looking Glass too. So potentially, well, I'm pretty convinced, but we'll have to unpack the evidence of it as we go along. But things never seem to quite come together for humanity. It's always just kind of like, it kind of feels like something gets unpacked, and then there's some kind of event, and then everyone gets distracted, or there's whatever the thing may be. And so if people have got access to this advanced technology, and it's already in use, they're the kind of things that can look at for it to already be in play. And yeah, there's a lot of wacky stuff going on with I should stop using the word wacky because the woo is going to become more and more real. But Trump's uncle got Tesla's diaries, and then you've got the book from Baron Trump, and time traveling and all that kind of thing from the 1890s. So there's some fun stuff going on there too. But I want to just reaffirm one of the points that I've been saying on here from the beginning, and it's not necessarily my idea, but it's something I've been pressing, is the dual use technology with the quantum chips, and that's one of the things that help Sonny White said on Joe Rogan Experience that he's working on as a DARPA project and private company now. But basically, what we're talking about is the microchips being quantum communication technology and zero point energy technology as well. So I'm pretty convinced that the build out of bringing all of the data centers, the AI, the building of all the data centers in the US, building them in nuclear facilities, building I believe what they're rolling out is this digital control grid in using this quantum microchips to power it, and they're using nuclear as national security. I believe that nuclear power is already obsolete. I believe that nukes are already obsolete, and that this is the unfolding of the quantum technology and the quantum communication. And it's gonna look like just regular microchips, and they're gonna use it to slow drip a watered down version of the technology while they're building these these underground bases, while they're building a control grid and kind of essentially keeping the good stuff for themselves, but then making the masses look like, oh, we're getting these breakthroughs, and it's likely that encryption's either already broken or can be bypassed as well with this technology. So having solutions that are analog and off-grid that having a focus on post-quantum encryption as well. I believe that's part of the narrative as well, because they can already go beyond it. So a lot of wild speculation in there, but this is where a lot of these threads are overlapping. And specifically, one of the main threads that I'm pulling on right now is time, because that seems to be a common thread with the advanced technology, whether it's from the propulsion devices, whether it's from the nature of reality stuff, or the ability to, know what's going on. So I know that kind of sounds a bit like a sci-fi novel, but it's not really. People can look up Roy D. Herbert and his time dilation theory as well, for the science on it.
I'm hoping,
But
dude.
yeah, I wanted to.
I'm hoping that
Oh,
it gets to a point where, like, as even just like the technology that us, plebs get exposed to, I'm hoping that things get to a point where, like, transparency is inescapable, and almost like, who was it? I think I heard Joe Rogan say something to this effect, where he was like, he thinks that in the future we'll be able to, like, detect bullshit and detect lies much better. Like, it'll be a lot harder to hide things and to lie, to obfuscate. And so, yeah, I'm just like, I'm hoping that, like, something involving that and the ability to better recognize truth and better like see if someone's lying or hiding something, that will be the catalyst for actually, whatever, like, everybody actually realizing a lot of this stuff, and getting to the core of what you're talking about, and actually getting the real deal good shit technology. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple of comments from me on that is that I also find myself getting a little snappy and hard nosed on this issue, because it's clear to me that with the changes coming on Earth, and with the lack of disclosure or real disclosure on UFO topics in the advanced technology, I don't really believe there's any intention at all to deal with stuff properly, and that they think that they can just kick the bucket down the road and just do whatever, and then just throw people a bone here and there just to kind of alleviate them, and that this is something that we have to ring through and that we have to make happen. Um, and then also the Joe Rogan comment. Yeah, I mean, I get it, and at the same time, what I see is that like it's just a huge amount of infiltration by AI and propaganda and bots and muddying the waters and kind of synthetic versions of reality, and like there's like a flooding of everything. And so while I think that there is a point in there with what he's saying about transparency in that, part of why this is called the Great Retardation is that, like, I don't necessarily think people know how bad it is either, and not to be black-pilled like in any sense of the word, but before people can get that transparency, we really need to understand the nature of the problem. And what I'm currently seeing is not necessarily good. So it may even get worse. Yeah, and it ties like just with the geopolitical stuff that we're about to get into, and that circus and the nukes and like all of that. In some regard, it's true what you're referring to. In another, it's like people are as lost as ever with all of these different narratives and the UFO file and JFK and the advanced technology and nuclear and government, and it's all just like flipping in between the same Overton window, and so we need to really rip through that. So yeah, that's kind of, and that like hoping like, oh please master, please give us some of this technology so we can like, it's actually like something that we've got to keep on pressing and moving forward and creating the solutions for ourselves and taking action on.
Yeah, totally agree.
So we've been going for a while. Did you want to get into the geopolitics now, or do you want to leave that for a separate episode, or how are you feeling?
Maybe, well, I'll tell you what we can do. We could go to antiwar.com and just have a quick look at some of the headlines. But yeah, maybe save for another episode, the next one.
Okay, well, maybe just quickly, I just wanted to ask you, maybe
go ahead.
We can do that, but maybe I just wanted to ask you, just generally, did you see Trump's speech with Saudi Arabia and about
calling out neoconservatives?
Yeah, and about the potential shift away from Netanyahu, if that's real or not. I just want maybe just to kind of round up today's episode, maybe just some general thoughts on the changes in the Middle East and how real or not real you think some of it is.
It's so hard to say, man, and especially with Trump, as we both know, like he's such a wild card. He's such a fucking buffoon, and and smart in some ways as well, and you just never really know what you're going to get with this guy. It's super fascinating. I was listening to Dave Smith. You probably heard his episode 2 recently on it. But it just that it, I don't know, like, yeah, so who is it? Like his envoy to the Middle East or to Israel, Witkoff, and the achievements that he's getting at the moment with like, getting hostages released from Hamas and got that one American or dual citizen. He's still like an Israeli who served in the IDF, but does have American citizenship. So got that guy released, the last like hostage that had any, American citizenship. So that's like phenomenal. And then everyone's flipping out, like the Ben Shapiro types and all these other, guys that are like loyal to Israel, flipping out because it seems like the only, I don't know, like if you try to sort of understand, well, why would you be flipping out about Trump's guy Witkoff getting the American citizen released? The only conclusion that I can come to, and others who have opined on this, is Witkoff kind of took away the pro-Israeli talking point and the talking point of like how America has to be super involved in this whole, can't even call it a war, like this just like canned hunt slaughter of the people in Gaza and Hamas there. Like having America super involved because like, oh, they've got American hostages too, but like now there's no American hostages, So yeah, like, and then just like the Trump Saudi Arabia, the Trump speech there, like, I thought it was really good. Like in the sense that he's like, it seems like there is some sort of a riff or a wedge being driven between Trump and these neoconservative war hawks. I mean, he fired Waltz. I can never remember these guys' first names. Yeah, he fired that guy. That guy was the one responsible for getting that signal chat leaked by inviting Jeffrey Goldberg, the New York Times. I think it's New York Times or some big time journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg, including him in the chat, and like for what other reason? I just didn't. His story of like how that even happened and how it was like a massive accident, and he like must have saved Jeffrey Goldberg's number in his phone incorrectly as someone else. Like, just none of it made sense. It seemed like it was a full sabotage. I mean, whatever. Like, you know, I think Catherine Austin Fitz's point about like, you know, if you know their names and faces, they're not the real players. So maybe this is just like a big fucking show just to keep like retards like me entertained. But nonetheless, it seems like that it was a, you know, like a total just like attempt at sabotaging any, you know, like any goodwill that Trump and his team might have had of like, you know, trying to bring some sense and to the Israel conflict with Gaza and trying to like, you know, come up with some sort of end. I mean, that signal chat was about, you know, about to go to war with Yemen and bombing the Houthis there. But yeah, so it seems like he's pissed off. I think it's Tim Waltz. He pissed off Tim Waltz, fired him, and now Trump is like having a dig at these neoconservatives and these interventionists. The way he pronounced it on stage in Saudi Arabia was interventionalists, but we'll let that slide. But yeah, so I don't know, like, you know, in his first term, he was pretty restrained, definitely comparatively speaking. But I mean, there was opportunities. John Bolton was trying to get him to bomb Iran back then, and he refused. But John Bolton was trying to get Trump to bomb Iran because the Iranians, like the IRGC or something, fucking downed one of their drones. So, but you know, it was unmanned. No American personnel or soldiers was injured at all. And Bolton's like, let's fucking, you know, let's bomb Iran. And Trump was like, no, the calculation doesn't make sense because no one died, and I'm not going to go kill a bunch of people, you know, over that. So, you know, he does have some history. He does have like some instincts of kind of, you know, being on the right side of whether I go and kill a bunch of people or whether he goes and kills a bunch of people or not. So let's hope that kicks into gear more so. And don't know what else to say other than like, yeah, he's fucking having a dig at the neocons, which that's about as good as you can hope for from Trump.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we can dig into this more seriously in the next podcast. But yeah, I mean, let's just pray that you know, less death.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Wars actually, and yeah, for all the people involved.
Absolutely.
And, Yemen and Syria, and
because that's right, man. Like that's the main thing that I'm really concerned with, and exactly what you've just said there, which is what you're concerned with, is like the innocent people caught in the middle. In Yemen, there's, you know, a lot of innocent people that get caught in between the Houthis and whoever, you know, they're beefing with, whether it was Saudi Arabia from 2015 up to 2021 or America and Israel right now. And then, you know, the people in Gaza, like, you know, not every person in Gaza is a fucking Hamas militant, you know, more than 50% of the people are fucking kids under the age of 16. And you know, in Lebanon, like not every person in southern Lebanon has Hezbollah. There's a bunch of innocent people. And in Israel itself, there's a bunch of innocent Israelis that don't want nothing to do, don't agree with Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud party. In Iran as well, like not every fucking person's a mullah or, you know, the Ayatollah. So, you know, and you know, like for us too, man, it's like we're not all fucking Anthony Albanese and the Australian military and whatever else, you know. So that's what we're always on the side of, like the innocent people, and that get caught in the middle of these fucking great power conflicts.
Yeah, and just quietly, I think one of my other theories is that both sides of politics in Australia are keen on nuclear for the reasons that I was mentioning earlier, and that even though it seems like the left or Labor are not interested in it, they're pushing renewables and that. I still think that they both want to make it happen, and even if they're pushing wind to make it fail to have nuclear happen, I think that both sides are eventually going to, keep pushing nuclear. But just to wrap up, brother, just not to kind of switch up the subjects too much, but one of the things that did come up was I kind of made a throwaway statement. I was just kind of checking myself, and it's in relation to natural law and the cover up of the MH370 and all these disinfo agents and people that are like, people did die, and there are also crimes against humanity, like in regards to the technology being hidden and being weaponized and used in war and all of that. And I made a throwaway statement, something to the effect of, "Oh, like this guy should be investigated," and it did have the connotations of, you know, authority or federal or whatever, and I checked it and I said, like I meant like journalistic investigation or whatever, but I just wanted to get your natural law perspective on like how like people that have, like, this has been going on for decades, and then there's also recent cases, and it has resulted in people dying, and it has really like has made you know this technology being able to be weaponized. So it doesn't have to be like the one particular case with like covering up MH370 stories specifically, even though that is part of what I'm getting at. But how do you deal with like people that are doing things like that, and like without being like, oh, lock him up, or government or police investigation, or like how would you look at that from a natural law perspective?
Well, like specifically the MH370 plane being zapped out
Let's
of the
just
sky.
say like someone is like deliberately like being the disinfo agent, running
yeah.
cover, saying it's all fake because of like trying to keep it hidden.
Well, man, like the natural law perspective, just to reiterate, is like, non-aggression principle, private property rights, and self-ownership, and that these things are cosmic. Like these things aren't just like fucking social constructs that like human beings have come up with, that like this is like just like laws of reality, and you can choose to violate them if you want, but like you'd be there's like a like karmic like kind of like thing that'll come back at you, and like, yeah, just that like these things have like been around forever, and you can like choose to align yourself with them, or you can ignore them, but you'd still just be ignoring like the fact of the matter. But yeah, so like say someone like who's like a disinformation agent, or like just spreading lies and stuff. I mean, I suppose it depends how consequential it is, but also that like, like everyone has the right to speak, and I think the best way to sort of deal with like bad speech is with good speech, I suppose,
Yeah, there's that, but then there's also like a coordinated campaign to. So basically, what you're saying is like, and maybe this is like me needing to clean up some of my own things on it, and we were basically called fascists as a result. Just FYI, which is kind of hilarious when we're talking about natural law. But it's like, it's not just like innocent, oh, like these videos are bullshit. It's like coordinated, like trying to suppress it, trying to misdirect the public, trying to cover things up, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you basically just think people are free to do what they want, leave them alone, and they'll get the consequences cosmically.
Oh, well,
like there is no like police go arrest him or whatever.
No. Yeah, it depends like how consequential it is, and it depends like who we're actually talking about. Like, are we talking about the actors that are responsible for the atrocity, and then themselves covering it up, and maybe like paying people to cover it up, or whatever it is, or threatening people?
Yeah, the people that. Yeah, I mean.
Or if it's just let's
just say someone's like let's say someone's a paid disinfo agent, and they're covering up the crimes.
I reckon. Well, then it depends. Like, I reckon we'd have to because that's the thing too, man. It's like you'd really want to be, because this is really a fundamental kind of Western concept of innocent till proven guilty. So the onus would be on us, or the onus would be on the people wanting to prove, or to making the accusation that, hey, you're a disinformation agent and here's the evidence to prove that. The onus would be on us to prove it. But then if you could, it'd be well, okay, well then how consequential are their lies, or are they accomplices to these crimes by way of disinformation? And in that case, then they would be very fucking responsible, I'd say. But I don't know, man. I'm not a expert in law and all that sort of stuff. But all that fascinates me, though.
And we both know that relying on the government and authority is not the way. So
even when I say not being even when I say the law, I'm not talking about the law, as enforced by government or anything like that. I just mean natural law, you know what I mean? And then, and also the law of these natural laws, they also, what's the word I'm looking for? It entails, or it comes with kind of these responsibilities, and then also the empowerment to, whatever, defend yourself, say, whatever, if someone comes at me with a knife and tries to slit my throat, then I have a right to defend myself. And if that means killing that person, then that's kind of that's the consequence of that. And then morally speaking, if we were just purely looking at it from that perspective, that the moral law would be on my side, you know what I mean? And people should be able to recognize that. But then so I don't know, when you get a little bit more, when it gets a bit more complicated with sort of some of these questions you're asking, I just think I'd try and look at it from a moral lens, and then if these actors are acting immorally, and then I think the other crucial thing would be you'd have to prove as well as intentionality. Are they intentionally doing this to cover up crimes? And if they're not, if they're just a useful idiot, then that's one thing. But you know what I mean? If it's intentional, then that's another thing.
Yeah, and I guess this is kind of the seeming lack of consequences, or it's easy to obfuscate between shell companies, or, oh no, I'm just saying what I believe is the truth, and but because I guess part of the reason why I'm talking about this is actions basically calling for people to be locked up for life and all this kind of thing, and because they're offshoots of the Department of Defense, or but there's a whole landscape of people that are part of muddying the waters, and part of calling the videos fake and all of that, and it's not innocent, if you will.
Yeah,
but it's
absolutely.
But the answer is not oh, you're going to pay for that, let's go put you in jail. You know?
No, and yeah, the whole concept of jail is a whole nother fucking can of worms too, man. That's pretty. That I have a tough time kind of, fucking wrapping my head around that and justifying that,
We can agree on that part, but I guess part of it is okay, then nothing happens and they keep doing it.
Yeah, no, totally. No, I think there should be consequences, just how you'd want to deal with it. Okay, here's a question for you, and we should wrap up soon, but I want to play one other video before we wrap, maybe right at the end, before the outro video. But here's a question for you. How would an ancient, say the indigenous, the Aborigines, how would they deal with these ideas of if someone is responsible for a crime, a serious crime, what?
Yeah, so they have rules, and they will be abided by, and that's one of the misconceptions about natural law, is that people think that you can just do whatever you want without consequences. But they have they have strict rules, and this is kind of gets into natural law communities. I've been seeing some discussion on. That doesn't mean there's no rules or committees or councils or whatever, because everyone's, like, what if your neighbor comes and puts poison in the stream upstream or whatever. But basically, like, the indigenous have got their own rules, and for example, with the keeping the oral wisdom intact, it would be told to two people, and they would have to recite it word by word. And if they got it wrong, it was punishable by death. So, like, because they know how important it is, and then also to do with who you can marry and sleep with and have children with. It's to do with, it's very specific. The tribes, it's called marriage law. The tribes are breeding with a particular other tribe based on the stars, and it's to do with keeping the gene pool diverse so they can breed out of cataclysms when humans are, down fewer in numbers. And so there's consequences that they're aware of by, like, you get like inbreeding and stuff like that. And so that's why they have like such harsh penalties, which we in modern Western society wouldn't agree to at all, because it's basically like, oh, the guy slept with someone else, so now you're gonna go kill him or something. But like, they have very, very strict rules about what is not okay, and to follow them for reasons.
Yeah. Totally, man. Yeah. I almost, I don't know, like, but that's why I think, like, it's so crucial to have the idea of innocent till proven guilty, because the last thing you want to do is being like sentencing someone to death, who's actually innocent, like they're wrongfully convicted, you know what I mean? So what's the old but you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like, but for someone who is like a convicted, proven, like rapist, serial killer, whatever, like, my feelings are like, why would we just be locking that person in the cage? Like, that person needs to be removed, like indefinitely. But you just want to make sure you're getting it right. But I'm trying to remember who the philosopher was who said it. Or maybe it was one of like the founding fathers of America or something like that. But they said something to the effect of, you'd rather just driving home the idea of innocent till proven guilty, that you'd rather 100 guilty men walk free than convict one innocent person.
Mm. Yeah, and we can pick up the real 7 deadly sins in a future podcast, as well as we can go through the trivium and quadrivium process as well. I think that those are important. So I think it's a good podcast today, brother.
Hell yeah, dude.
Go back into it.
Absolutely, brother. So let me just play this. We don't have to. Might even play the whole thing. It goes for about 6 minutes, but I just think it's worth it. It's just pretty on point, on the same sort of idea, topic of. Like, just the dealing with all these powerful people and how, like, all these control systems and whatever else. But I think this video really helps illustrate as just a very simple idea that is just a fact of reality that is worth always keeping in mind when we're talking about some of these things that seem very black-pilling and dark.
Once upon a time, there were 100 million people.
Oh, hang on.
They had different...
Sorry. Let me just mute you. Let me... Oh, what am I doing? I'm making a dog's breakfast out of it. There we go. Let's do this.
Different interests, different beliefs, different occupations, but for the most part, they got along pretty well. Then one day, a gang of a few hundred people showed up. Need to zoom in some more to see them. I know they're there somewhere. Zoom in. There they are. And this gang of a few hundred said to the throng of 100 million, "From now on, you all have to give us a cut of everything you earn."
This is an accurate graphical comparison between the number of American taxpayers and the number of U.S. congressmen.
And the throng said, "Gosh, do we have to give you a cut of what we earn?" And the gang of a few hundred said, "Yes, you have to." And the throng said, "Well, okay, I guess we have to." And one little troublemaker asked, "What if we don't?" The gang of a few hundred didn't like this and said, "If you do not comply, we shall unleash upon you our legions of enforcers." And the throng cried, "Oh no, please don't. We will comply, we will pay."
This is an accurate graphical comparison between the number of American taxpayers and the total number of IRS employees.
Time went by, and the gang of a few hundred said, "Now we want more of what you earn." And this kept happening.
Oh, I'm going to pause it there. That music's actually infuriating. I forgot how fucking annoying that is. But you get the point, right? You get the point that, like, you know, we well outnumber these fucking psychopaths that want to control us. That's the point.
Absolutely. And we've all got to come into our own power, and we've all got to align our actions with natural law and objective morality and take action. And that's what we're doing here. And that actually sounded like Larkin Rose. Larkin Rose is a buddy of Mark Passio, by the way. He's been on Mark's podcast.
It is Larkin Rose. That's exactly who it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I was actually just listening to him on Passio's podcast. So yeah, he knows his natural law stuff for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right, dude. Before we go out, let me just make sure I've got all my ducks in a row. God damn it. It's been so long since I've done this. Hang on. I know what I need to do. Sorry. Okay, cool, bro. All right. Any final words before we close out?
No.
All
Ciao,
right.
everybody.
Peace, brother. So good to get this going again, bro. And we'll keep it rolling, eh? We're at number 7 now, so in order to that we've got to the hardest part, and then once we get over this number 7, once we start number 8, we're off to the races, dude. Then there's just
straight to 77.
There's no stopping us, brother. All right, man. Peace out, Nick.
Peace.
Catch ya.
And here's what it is. This is actually what the true great work is now. It is the arduous task of influencing other people to go through the very same process of change, of positive change in consciousness that you have gone through. It is to help them to realize that in supporting and condoning the legitimacy of authority and government, in other words, man's law, that what they have actually been supporting and condoning is the legitimacy of slavery. Truth is objective. That means that it's not dependent upon the perceptions of human beings. No one wants to hear that. That is a direct assault, a direct frontal assault on the human ego. What truth is that which does not waver. It's there. It's always been there. It's always going to be there. Nothing anybody does can change what has happened. I'm talking about the events that have taken place in the past and are taking place in the present. That's all. And guess what? That's all the truth is. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that.